Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second annual launch event sponsored by the Ventura Education Partnership. I'm Roger Rice, the Superintendent of Ventura Unified School District, and I'm really excited to be here this evening to hear three wonderful presentations and innovative practices that have been sponsored by the Ventura Education Partnership. And I'm equally excited about the ongoing partnership with VEP. As you know, they are the foundation supporting Ventura Unified School District. And I'm so excited to support their focus on innovation as we continue our partnership moving forward. So with that, I want to welcome everybody here this evening, and I would like to thank VEP for all of their hard work. Madhu, you do a wonderful job. We really appreciate you and your entire team. And with that, I would like to bring up our board president, Ms. Sabrina Rodriguez.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you all for being here tonight. As you know, VEP is not just a community partner, they are the community partner for Ventura Unified. For over 30 years, they've helped make things possible in our classrooms that wouldn't be possible without them. The all-volunteer organization does so much to incubate new ideas and bring those new ideas to our children, enriching their educational experience. And we are so grateful for their partnership and look forward, as Roger said, to many more years. So thank you, Madhu, for having us, and I can't wait to hear this evening's presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Rice and Sabrina. Welcome, everyone. My name is Madhu, and I'm president of Ventura Education Partnership. We are proud to showcase three amazing Ventura Unified School District educators who have received grants from Ventura Education Partnership for innovative work in their classroom. These grants make a huge difference in giving educators the flexibility and the freedom to enrich their curriculum with opportunities that are more hands-on and more engaging for their students. We're really excited to give you a look into these educators' classrooms and the work that they are doing. We hope that you all picked up a program. It has some great information about VEP as well as about our sponsors and the purpose of tonight. In addition to sharing these stories with all of you, we will be sharing these stories online so that teachers and other educators, parents, can find inspiration from each other as we work to educate our future. We also use tonight to raise money for our VEP Grants program. That's the classroom grants. As you can imagine, tonight would have looked very different if we were here a week or two ago. We had a room full of community leaders and VEP donors who wanted to be with us tonight. Tonight is an exercise in flexibility and innovation, doing things differently. We wanted to make sure that our educators had the opportunity to share their stories with all of you, and we are going to be working hard to make sure that we share these stories online and through different formats so that we can all feel some positivity and inspiration. I want to thank some of our major sponsors for tonight: Era Energy, Mountains to Beach Marathon, Fast Signs of Ventura, and VACE, Ventura Adult Education, Ventura Adult Continuing Education, sorry. And then also need to recognize some amazing volunteers who made tonight happen, especially Ken Trainer and Jeanette Sanchez Palacios. Thank you so much. And of course, we must thank everyone at the Rubicon for a most beautiful venue. So relax and enjoy and feel inspired. Thank you.
At Atlas Elementary, innovation looks like empowering students with personal leadership, rigorous academics, and innovative technology. Through the 7 habits of happy kids with individual, class, and school-wide goal setting, Atlas students thrive in a culture of leadership and personal responsibility. For this 3rd grade class, a Think Big VEP grant provides opportunities to appreciate and understand our natural world and environmental change. Students learn that they have a voice that can be used for responding to change rather than reacting to it.
Do you feel like you can make a difference? Most likely you're here tonight because you do. Are you a risk taker? Do you take chance? Would you take a chance on someone that you didn't know? Would you take a chance on someone like me? Would you take a chance on someone who was much smaller than you? Someone who still believed that monsters lived under their beds? Well, I asked my students if they thought that they could make a difference. And half of my students said no. They didn't feel like that they were capable, that they were given the tools where someone would listen to them, where someone would give them the opportunity to make a difference in someone else's life. And it broke my heart. These are kids in my classroom who write positive affirmations on windows. These are kids who made a school garden to better our community. These are the kids who didn't feel like they could make a difference. Most of the time, our students are hushed these days, mostly by our own insecurities, because we don't know what they're going to say. And why not give them a voice? Why not allow them to speak their own truth? Most of the time, we tell our students what we want them to hear. We tell them what we want them to do. But what if we let go of some of those reins? What if we gave them the opportunity to surprise us? Now, they say kids say the darndest things, and they sure do. This is one of my students. His name is Jonathan. And we were talking about natural hazards. And we were talking about the winds. And we got into the speech of Santa Ana winds. And then we started talking about different natural hazards that can affect other people around us. How does a natural hazard affect how we live? How can it affect our neighbors, our community? Well, he raises his hand. He's very inquisitive. I always know that I'm going to get some very witty, very clever comment from him. But I said, okay, well, what do you have to say? And he said, well, I heard that this one place, it was raining fish and frogs. And I said, okay, well, now in my head, right, I'm like, okay, well, is this doing damage? Am I doing damage control, or am I going to go with it? And we had just gotten off the topic of hurricanes, and we had talked about Hurricane Katrina and how that had affected the area in which they lived, and it had affected people's lives. Well, he was under the impression that at some point it could physically rain frogs and fish, and he was certain, like that was going to happen. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about it. I said, could a fish and a frog actually come down from the clouds? Now the whole class is up in arms, right? Half of the class is saying, yeah, it could totally happen. And half the class is saying, no. So now they're at each other. And I said, okay, let's talk about it. So we got into the conversation of, sometimes when a flood might happen, or a hurricane, or some strong winds, and they might pick up something that doesn't normally belong there. And after going over into a discussion, I thought I was doing a pretty good job of explaining it, but in the end, I think he was thinking that I had no idea what I was saying. But it was the chance for me to get a feel for where their minds go and the creativity behind just some of the answers that come out of their mouth, and how I can adjust my teaching to encourage some of their creativity. So these are my students. These are the first group of students who are going to reap the benefits of our Think Big grant. And through this grant, we wanted to build awareness. We want to show them that it's important to be aware of who they're around, how they make other people feel, and how they feel. Because a lot of times, they change how they act and how they feel depending on who they're with. And we want them to get a feel for how that they can make a difference and they can bring awareness to other students. And so through this grant, we were able to create a pathway for them to show their awareness towards what's happening in the real world, because to them, they're the center of their universe. So I wanted them to become aware of how their actions affect everything else around them. So through time-lapse video, which is just one aspect of our grant, we were able to create our own data. So instead of looking up our research on YouTube or looking up someone else's research, we made our own. And it's hard enough going over weather patterns in Southern California, because we usually have about the same weather patterns year-round. Our students were able to find their own weather patterns and the life cycles of plants and animals through data that they created in classrooms. And this was just such a small part about what VEP gave to us. Through their knowledge of what happens in our lives, through their knowledge of what happens in our environment, they're going to be engineering prototypes to be able to affect change in someone else's life. So now that they're aware of what's around them, they're able to make a difference in someone else's life because their minds have been open to the chance of and possibility. So right when we think that life is going smooth, we get that curveball, right? The loss of a family member, mudslides, fire. And we go into survival mode. And as an adult, right, you're going into survival mode for yourself, for your family, for your pets, for your neighbors. But as a teacher, we are also in survival mode for our kids. And not only are we thinking about how this is affecting us, but we know that we have to be aware of how those kids are now going to come back to us after something has happened in their life. And through VEP, we were able to use their experiences to better the next generation. So we used what they experienced to talk about it, to bring out emotion, to get them to understand that they can change just a little bit and it would positively affect someone's life. So going back, when I asked them if they felt like they could make a difference, and they said no, I, again, broke my heart. And I said, so why? Like, why would you say no? And they just flat out said, because adults don't always listen to us. You know, I couldn't tell her she was wrong, but I wanted them to understand when I said make a difference, I didn't mean that their world, they had to go out and physically do something. It could have been an idea. It could have been something small. It could have been something that they created on their own. And once I brought their world into the classroom, the outside world into the classroom, and they saw how little of a change that they could make, and they could make it bigger, and they could make it bigger, then they were all like, yeah, well, we could do that. So I guess I just learned I just need to phrase my questions better. Because they do believe that they can make a difference, but I guess it just depends on what kind of difference they're looking to make. So you all have that teacher, that person in your life who really made a difference to you. And going into my 6th grade year, I moved from a smaller campus to a very, very large city, and I knew no one. And middle school was very scary. And this is a very similar thing to what our own students in Ventura are going through, right? They're going from a small school setting to a very large middle school setting. And most of the time, they're going with people that they know, their friends that they've grown up with. But I hated 6th grade. It was so scary. I didn't know where to sit for lunch. I didn't know where my classes were. I was totally lost. We had lockers at the time. Who knew about locker combinations? Had no idea. But then I met my science teacher, Mr. Vanderveen. He was like 7 feet tall, and I'm not like exaggerating. He had to duck to get into the classroom. He was so tall. And just your average science teacher, right? We did electric circuits. We even made those model cells where you make them out of food, right? And the class just smells like frosting for like a month. I remember I ended up making mine out of pizza. And so I digress. But Mr. Vanderveen opened his door for me. And he saw that I was an outsider. And he let me take the time to find my place. And if I needed someone to talk to, or I needed somewhere to eat, or if I needed just some support, he was there. And he didn't do anything out of the ordinary that not any other teacher would do. But it's what I needed at the time. So I want you to think about that one person. You know, there's always that one person. And if you don't feel like you have been that person for someone yet, there's still so many chances to be that person for someone else. So of course, you know, I found Mr. Vanderveen 20, 30, some odd years later off Facebook, right? And he's retired now, but he was like, you're speaking about what? Like, he doesn't even know, right? He doesn't even know of the difference that he made in my life. And that's just so humbling, right? And I feel like we can learn just so much from that. So my challenge to you is this. Remember when you were a kid and you still thought that monsters lived under your bed, and you still thought that you could, fight off those fire-breathing dragons. But remember that time when you found the courage to look under your bed and realize that life was a little bit more manageable than what you thought it was. Well, our kids are trying to do that right now. They're trying to find a way to make life that much more manageable. And that's through our student voice and through their ability to make a difference. And in this ever-changing world, this dynamic world that we can't keep up with, you have the opportunity to make that difference. And, I want you to lay under the stars and just think about how you're going to do that. And think back to that little kid that you were, and who was that person, and who really made a difference in your life. Thank you.
Kappa Middle School, innovation empowers students to see possibilities. Through multiple VEP grants over the years, Kappa STEAM has developed beyond the grants, where students are daring to think outside their labels and stereotypes and learning practical ways for applying their unique qualities. Teachers act as coaches to let students pursue passions while holding high expectations and making academic connections real. Students typically see themselves as engineers who are capable of researching, designing, prototyping, and presenting solutions to problems they have identified.
All right, I'm like super nervous, but okay. So I'm from Kappa STEAM. My name is Chrissy Steinlich, and we are all about middle school opportunity, and we just are super thankful to be here. So I want to take you back, because at some point you realize I teach middle school, and then all of the candle lighting and prayer and, oh my gosh, I can't believe she does this, starts to come to your mind. So let's go back and remember middle school. Do you remember it, or do you want to forget about it? And so, again, gone are the days of little and cute, and what Petra was talking about, these cute little fuzzy people. And then now we have bold awkwardness, and uncomfortable is the norm, and people who are trying things just to see what reactions they'll get. And so often we start labeling kids. Am I smart? Am I dumb? Do I have what it takes? And so the labels come, and we become more and more unsure of who we are. So I give them the secret on day one. And the secret is, raise your hand, but wear your deodorant. And I tell this on day one, it'll be okay, just put on your deodorant first, then raise your hand, and you'll be okay. It is totally the secret. But seriously, in 2011, I wrote a grant for Lego Mindstorms. And the Legos were really about robots, and it was way back when robots were kind of very first coming out. And I thought this was the coolest thing. So I started an after-school club, and I invited several students to come and try them out. And I thought it was just going to be about robots. And little did I know that after a little while, I started having other conversations with kids. Conversations about leadership and teamwork, about research and communicating. I was teaching them how not to be afraid and how to speak up and how to advocate for themselves. So then, in the next phase, I wrote one for a 3D printer. And when I wrote for the 3D printer, I actually had to start using it in the library because I was running out of room in my class. And so I started having kids actually want to know about surface area and volume for the first time because it meant the difference between an 18-hour print time and a 45-minute one. So it made the math real. And so I started partnering and doing collaborative projects, and one was with Senor Escobedo Garcia, who is part of our dual language program. And he was doing a thing on Egyptian artifacts. And so he would bring some of the kids over, and some of my kids would teach them how to do 3D printing. So they created models and printed all sorts of artifacts about Egypt. And then I also partnered, which is this picture, with Ms. Lori Curtis Abbey, who teaches 8th grade U.S. history at our school. And this is a student who created an artifact about his family history. And so then here comes this idea that there's more to do and there's more that can be done. And Mr. Escobedo Garcia and I started having conversations on like Tuesdays after school, and it became a regular thing. And we started talking about that there's a need, and how do we provide opportunities for kids, for our kids, for all kids, and how do we do this, and how do we do what we wanted when we were that young? And so this idea of ANACAPA STEAM hadn't yet been born, but that summer our principal sent us to training, and in the fall we started ANACAPA STEAM. And so here are some of our kids. We exist mainly to provide equity and access, remove barriers, to connect kids, to inspire kids, and to allow them to see what they possibly can become. And then there's this door, and we were talking about this door of opportunity. And if we're honest, the door of opportunity is out there somewhere, but for some of us, it's really far away. And some of us know that we've gotten our hand slapped before for trying to open it a little too early. And for some of us, we know that the winding road is grueling and the barriers are many, and it's going to take an exceptionally resilient student or child or adult to actually get to the door where it seems like it's real. And so in this door idea, we were thinking, how do we allow kids to get closer to that door? What barriers can we remove? How can we get kids to see that the door is actually real, when in reality, some of us feel like the door isn't there at all? And so remembering back to middle school, this is where we start to realize, I want to be, but I'm scared that I am. I'm scared if I'm smart. Am I not smart? Am I just an athlete? Am I just a pretty face? And the labels come, and they start having assumptions made about us based on language, based on a zip code, based on economics, based on all sorts of things that are unspoken, and they get stuck to us. And then we find it hard to even reach the door. And so here I'm going to tell you about the work that we do at ANACAPA STEAM, and this is Allie's story. And Allie is just very typical of the kind of kids that we serve in our school. And she says, I can't do it. Can you help me? Maybe I'm stupid. And so what happened before that is Allie was in my class, and she was using nylocks, which are pictured here. And if you've never seen a nylock before, it has a silicone gasket, and it's used on the robots to keep the high friction areas from like coming apart. And so I told her, hi, this is going to be really a little bit more difficult than normal. I'm going to show you how they work, but just be prepared that it's going to be a little more difficult. And so she takes them, and I leave, and she does her little thing. And then all of a sudden, about 15, 20 minutes later, she walks up and says, I can't do it. Can you help me? Maybe I'm stupid. And so if I blow this, if I miss this opportunity, I miss my moment to bring her closer to this door. And so I asked her, well, what happened? And she said, you're right. They were hard, and I tried. And they were hard, and I couldn't do it. And I said, well, did you get any other help before you came? Because again, this idea of being on a team. And she says, yeah, I asked Sam, because he's smarter than me, but he couldn't do it either. And nowhere in there did she ever think that Sam was stupid, but she sure as heck thought she was stupid. And so right at that point, I had a vehicle to open a door, to bring her closer to a door, to maybe challenge her thinking, to maybe change her mind about what she thought she was capable of. And so here comes Ventura Education Partnership. And this is the part where for you provided me the opportunity to teach outside of the content area. You provided me opportunities to bring kids closer to the opportunity, to open doors for them, to change their minds. And whether it's robots or 3D printers or sensors or technology, it all serves to bring our kids closer to the life that they don't even know exists yet. And so Anna Kappa STEAM was born, and it exists mainly to break down barriers, to open doors, to provide kids opportunity, to give all kids access and equity in their different projects that they're working on, to really meet the needs that were missing from our lives when we were growing up as well. Trying to give them opportunity that might be out there that hasn't yet been invented. Maybe they'll get that job one day. And so we tell them, you're welcome to be here. The door is always open. You're welcome anytime. You bring so much. Regardless of who you are, you bring so much, whether it's language or teamwork or maybe team building, or maybe you're just the person who can build, but you also can bring other people in. And so the new labels started, and we have multilingual and mentors. And we have resilient and capable. And we have problem solvers who are powerful. And we have creative and innovative. And we have all these inspiring people who are team members, but also servant leaders. And we have inspirational people who are also award-winning. And we have scientists and technologists and engineers and artists and mathematicians. And here we are at Anna Kappa STEAM, creating opportunities and changing minds. And we thank you, Ventura Education Partnership, for providing those opportunities for us. We hope at the end of this you see middle school just a little bit differently, a world of possibilities, a world that you can possibly go out and get a kid a little closer to the door, that you don't shut a door, but that you maybe open one, that you maybe let go of some of the assumptions when you see someone, and maybe you start trying to apply the new labels. So we thank you, we appreciate you, and we couldn't be here without you. So thank you.
At Foothill Technology High School, innovation looks like students becoming empowered citizens. The I Am Project, funded by VEP, is created by students, of students, and for students. Through student-produced photography and video portraits, students are both given a visual presence and voice on their campus, creating a strong school community. Viewers gain a deeper understanding of their peers and strengthen personal connections with a look into their hopes, fears, concerns, and humanity.
Why are you here? What are you doing here? What is your purpose? These are things I ask myself often, and sometimes the answers change on an hourly rate. I have been a visual arts teacher for 18 years, and my goal has been to have students learn to use their voice, to communicate visually, and to express themselves. That has been my goal, and that has been my drive. I have found that relationships do not occur as much. There is not as much connection on campus as I would like. And as a teacher, I have a constant frustration with cell phones. Many teachers do. We as adults have a hard time managing our own cell phone usage. Children, students, far worse. The cell phone gets in the way of students creating. If you're bored, you get on your cell phone. I want bored students because out of boredom, people create. That's a selfish goal. It is interesting that the phrase this week is social distancing. There's been a lot of social distancing for the past 13 years, ever since we've had cell phones. And this is not a rant about cell phones, but it's just ironic that now we have social distancing. It happens a lot. There are a lot of students who are on campus, filled with students, who are communicating with other people, but not to the people next to them. My goal is to use this project and have my classes create interaction while they're also creating art. The I Am project I started as a way to have students go out into our quad during lunch, and my challenge was for them to go out, they worked in groups of 2 or 3, to go out and find people that they didn't know and interact with them. And the photos that you see are at close proximity with their cell phones. Cell phones are a great tool. They have so much capability. So they're using these to take these photos close proximity. So I asked them, I said, go find people you don't know. I challenged them. Some of them did. Some of them just photographed their friends. It was up to them. But I said, the goal is to have strong photography, but I also want them interacting. They can't just show up and shove a camera in the person's face. That would be strange. What they did is they walked up. They had 2 reflectors. They had 2 diffusion panels. This is how close they were. The person who's being photographed was this close. Then they had a diffusion panel. The sun was shining through the diffusion panel, and they photographed about 3 feet, 2 feet away from the person. That's pretty intimate. That forces relationship. The end result are photographs, but the underlying lesson is they're interacting. This grant has kind of snowballed for me because I love photography. That's what I went to school for. But this is not enough for me. I'm not satisfied with just portraits. So the grant is snowballing into incorporating video, interviews, stories, having students share stories with each other, things that are not shared in class, giving them a space to share what's going on in their lives. Out of one of the projects, at no time did this ever come up in a class, but out of a project, out of an interview, a student in his interview shared the emotion of, in his 9th grade year, of losing his mother. And he talked about that in depth, and I just cried at my desk watching this video. It's painful, but not something that was shared in class. Did not walk into the class and showcase that. But there was a space for him to speak and to share like really deep pain. And it was important. It was important for me as a teacher to hear it, as a human. And I think it was important for him to share it also. I sat in a room we had a panel at our school last year, and students shared some of the things that were going on for them. And one of the things that stood out to me was that students didn't feel seen. And I identify with that. I could see that as a high school student. I had that feeling. You know, high school can be a lonely place. It's filled with students, and it can be very lonely. And some of these students would walk around campus and just not feel seen, okay? I want my students to be seen. I want them to be heard. I want them to feel like they are listened to. So I've been teaching visual arts and teaching students to create and to express themselves. And where I'm seeing this project go is I'm still going to be having students express themselves and create, but I want to gather stories. And I think story is so powerful. And creating a space where students can be heard, can be seen, can express themselves, and have identity. I think that's incredibly important, especially when there's so much conversation and not much listening. And I think having my students who are they're gonna be tasked with filming students properly, lighting them properly, making sure the audio works properly. That's the underlying, that's the technical That's the business side of it. But the meat of it is, how are you interacting with students? You're going to be asking questions. What are you asking them? What are you getting back? What are they giving you in return with interviews and stories? It's ironic also because today I received over social media, I had a former student from about 7 years ago contact me. And it was great. Like, I haven't seen the student forever. Has done amazing work, amazing photography while I had her as a student. And I looked at her post, and one of her posts said, well, when I graduated, I was considered the most creative. I was voted the most creative. I put it on a strong face, a good face. But what people didn't know is when I went through high school, I struggled. I had anorexia. I self-harmed. I had 24/7 anxiety. All these things that as a teacher I didn't know. And she hid it. I think she had 1 or 2 people that knew. And there's a lot of students that hide because they don't feel like they can communicate, that they don't have somebody who they can share that with. And that is incredibly frustrating for me. So my goal is that people are sharing, right? I think that life happens in communication. So if people are sharing what's going on with their life, other people have the freedom to be like, yeah, I feel that too. Public speaking, it's terrifying, I agree, right? Similar things like that. Give that space, because everyone walks into class, we don't know each other's stories, and I think if we know each other's stories, which has to occur over communication, right? So instead of being on the cell phones and consuming, because we're all consumers, I want creators. My students are going to be creators, they are creators, they're going to be creating more. So this project is going to move from portraits into video. I see it as a school-wide project that's going to evolve into just finding all the different students that I want to have information about. Students who wrote an amazing essay. English teacher can tell me the student who it is. Maybe they'll read their essay, we'll record them, or we'll have somebody else record their essay. It'll be video, interview athletes, top artists. I want students to be heard. I want them to be seen. I want them to be able to express themselves like my art students. I want them to have interaction and community. So my challenge to you is to ask yourself, what are you doing here? Why are you here? What is your purpose? And if you know that, and I know it evolves, mine evolves daily, have you shared that with somebody? Because life happens in communication. Thank you.
Wow, so I'm pretty speechless. How's everyone feeling? Woo! Please join me in just another huge round of applause for tonight's educators and our featured speakers. I think they were fantastic. And I'd love to have all 3 of our speakers, I don't know if they can hear me in the back, but if you could join us on stage, it would be awesome for us to give you another round of applause and click some pics too. And in the meantime, I just want to say, how incredibly lucky are our children of this community, our students, to have teachers who can really empathize with where their students are at and take the time and care to figure out what our students need. It's phenomenal. And I just thank all of you so much for sharing your heart, your time, and your passion with us tonight, but also with our kids every day. Thank you.